Welcome to the stream. On my last stream, I showed you a game that for many years I considered that it was the best game I'd ever played. And I felt that way for many years, uh, 20 maybe. And then I played another game in the 80s uh, that I thought was the best game I'd ever played. And I think I was pretty certain it would remain the best game I ever played. Uh, and then last year I played the best game I've ever played. Um, for the third time. And that makes me think that perhaps I'm not done playing best games. And if that inspires you, that I'm glad about that. Your best games and mine are ahead of us. I like to think that at least. So let's have a look at it. I played knight f3. My opponent played knight f6. I played knight c3. It's a little weird way to get to a standard Pirc defense. But that's what we got to. I played e4, d6, d4, bishop g7, and I played bishop e2, which is a conservative continuation. Karpov was known, as far as I know, he only played this line against the Pirc. But there are other lines. For instance, an early f4 was known as the Austrian attack, and Fischer used to play it, I know. And there are other variations, bishop to e3, followed by queen to d2 and castling queenside um, is another way to do it. But I like bishop e2. My opponent castled, I castle. Black played c6, which usually means he's going to play b5. And with the threat of b4, the knight on c3 moves, and black can take the pawn on e4. So in its way, c6 and b5 are moves that have something to do with the center. I stopped that. a4. And if he had let me, I would have played a5, I think, which would cramp him on the side of the board that he's going to actually be active on, or is usually active on. So he played a5, though. I played h3. I'm not sure whether my bishop is going to go to e3 or f4 or g5. And if I go to e3, for instance, the knight doesn't get to go to g4. And also, it's preventing the bishop out to g4. And there aren't a lot of options for that bishop. So I thought h3 would be helpful. And he played a normal-looking move, knight on b to d7. Okay, so I decided bishop f4. Now my opponent went wrong here. He didn't blunder. He played h6. Now, as I said on the previous move, I had a two or three choices as to where to put my bishop. But the move before this, I decided on the f4 square, and only then he plays h6, which prevents me from playing bishop to g5. Not logical. Not logical. If he hadn't played h6, but had found another move, queen to c7 or something, I was not going to play bishop to follow up bishop f4 with bishop g5. So wasn't going to do it. So this move wasted. Didn't have to be played. But it got a little worse. What's White's next move? There are very few moves that to even look at. The first one and the last one, I would say, to look at is what? Connect the rooks, get a piece out, attack something. What's not to like? So the decision to play h6 on the previous move was a decision to play king h7 on this move. Neither of which had to be played. And when you have the black pieces, and even when you have the white pieces, giving away two moves contraindicated. But it's not losing. I don't come crashing in on the king side now. But I'm adding up a little advantages here, and they will make themselves felt. So, rook e1, another sort of obvious move. Um, and now black played knight to e8. Uh, he needed, I think this is me putting myself in my opponent's head. I think he wanted to play e5 and getting his share of the center. Makes sense. The arithmetic breaks down here, though. If you look closer, you'll notice that black's last move, knight to e8, broke the coordination between the rook on f8 and the queen on d8. So that means if black were to play e5, yes, the e5 pawn is defended by the d6 pawn, the d7 knight, and the bishop on g7, which would be fine ordinarily because it's attacked 3 times by the pawn on d4, the bishop on f4, the knight on f3. The problem is one of these pieces is only pretending to defend e5. One of them is pinned to the queen on d8. So you look closer, you'll see what I'm talking about. Anyway, I didn't give him a chance to play e5. I played e5 myself. Yeah, black moves back, I move forward. That's sort of the nature of when you don't get your share of the center, you risk having to play most of the game on 3 ranks while your opponent plays on 5 ranks. Black played c5. And so I'm ahead in development. And yeah, you see there's 5 pieces on the original row. Everything's lined up horizontally there. I thought opening lines couldn't be a bad idea. So I played DC. Now the computer thought that knight takes c5 was a good move here. Or at any rate, better than what he played. It gives me still plus 1.4 as opposed to, let's go back, what he did play, yeah, it jumps up to 3. The big problem he has, again, is that his queen is undefended. I immediately start making plans to take the knight in front of it. Attacking it twice, it can't move, and I'm about to attack it a 3rd time, which would end the game pretty quickly. Well, he saw that one of his problems was that bishop, and he immediately made moves to get rid of it. But my plan continues. He takes the bishop on b5, and I take on b5 with my knight. Okay, so let's sum up. White couldn't be more centralized. Black could be less developed, but not easily. He is woefully behind. My rook on e1 is urging the e-pawn forward. And again, the knight on d7 is pinned. Well, he got rid of the pin there by playing queen to b6. But now my pieces open up. I played e6 here, which opens up the diagonal here. And it opens the e line for my rook on e1. A multi-purpose move. Black took. And now I play knight to c7, attacking the rook. And it's a whole rook, so he has to move it. And now since the e line opened up, I have rook takes e6. So I'm moving up the board. I'm also attacking e7. But first things first, queen safety. He took something and got out of the way. And I play rook takes e7. So now I got his king in my sights. The bishop on g7 is pinned. The h6 pawn is hanging. He played what looked like a miracle move, attacking a rook on e7 and then bishop on f4. What's not to like? Well, I don't really remember what I was thinking, but presumably I'd seen my own miracle move, knight to d5, defending both pieces. Sure enough, queen back to b2, and now I start commencing my direct attack on the king. Rook to g8 is forced here. And now, well, let's look at this. This is what got me into the Chess Life magazine. was this position. I saw a few continuations, but one of them had a bunch of discovered checks in them, double discovered checks. And if you've been around a while, you'll know that with double checks, all things are possible. Um, and arithmetic plays not a very big role. With double checks hovering around, you're not counting rook's worth 5, knight's worth 3, queen's worth 9. No. You're headhunting. And that's what I was doing here. I played knight to g5. Black takes on h6. Knight f7, double check. And of course, also, we all know that double checks can only be answered by a king move. This move loses immediately to queen to g5 mate. So the only other move is king h7. And here's the fancy move. Queen h6, setting up another double check. Bishop takes h6 forced. Knight g5, double check. King h8, only move. And rook h8. This was played online, so there weren't any gold coins. But anyway, it was a very satisfying game, and maybe I'll play a game better than this in the future. I hope I will. But if I don't, it's pretty good. It's a pretty nice game. And so, well, I hope you like the game. And I hope it inspires you the way it inspired me. You've been playing for a few years. You've got a best game you've played. You're going to have another best game, and maybe one after that. I'm 67, and I'm not done getting better. So, see you next time. Check me out.